So on this channel, I try and talk about cults, mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, the cult I grew up in. Obviously, I talk a lot about conformity because cults talk a lot about conformity because that's the whole point.
Make no mistake.
The devil is looking for an opportunity to steal our unity from us.
But I also used to be a member of Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And when I think back on my experience, I don't think of myself as being a robot or a drone. It didn't feel that way at the time. I felt like a three-dimensional person because of course I was. And when I think back on like the background characters of my life, just people in the congregation and my family, obviously, I remember a lot of quirky individuals, people who, when you see them, you're like, oh, yeah, that guy, he's a real character. Because, yes, you have to be united in belief. And yes, there are certain aphorisms and things you're supposed to repeat to yourself, but you are still ultimately an individual in some way. And even though everybody's supposed to believe the same thing, they don't actually all believe the same thing in their head. And I think the best way of demonstrating this is paradise.
He wants to give this gift, an earth-wide paradise, to you, to enjoy in happiness and health forever.
Jehovah's Witnesses have this dualistic view of the future. Armageddon's going to happen. All the bad people will be dead, which means that everyone who's not Jehovah's Witnesses. And then the earth is going to be restored to paradise conditions. Those pictures you see on the front of their magazines and tracts that show people playing with animals and carrying fruit baskets, that's paradise. That is a perfect earth. You will be made perfect. We will be like Adam and Eve, except we'll all wear business casual clothes. Now, some Jehovah's Witnesses, 144,000 of them, in fact, believe just like in their head and in their heart that they are going to go to heaven. There is a smaller class of people, the anointed class, who will go to heaven, but we don't care about those literally holier than thou, angelic, hoity-toity, you know what's. I'm talking about people of the earth, my kind of people, paradise people. So what is paradise going to be like? Like you look at these pictures or the little videos they have, which are almost always just montages set to inspirational sounding music. There's not a lot of specifics on how the day-to-day life of paradise will function. Like, how are they getting those clothes? We see them in the background of a lot of these pictures walking out of like rubble because, of course, the entire earth will be destroyed. Paradise and what it will be like is one of the few instances in a Jehovah's Witness's life where they will be encouraged to use their imagination.
It's good to imagine ourselves in paradise. It helps us to rejoice in the hope that Jehovah has given us.
See yourself in a world that is new.
Just see me too. Just see us all in a world that is new.
So in practice, what this forms is head-canon, fan fiction. Whatever you think paradise will be like, might as well be that. No one can prove you wrong, as long as it vaguely conforms to what you see in these pictures. So I thought I would talk about, when I was a witness, what my own headcanon was for how paradise would work. Just little pet theories I had about how Jehovah's Witnesses would restore the earth to its Edenic state. The normal sorts of things a teenage boy is supposed to be thinking about.
When I share Jehovah's promises of eternal life with others, I too am encouraged.
When I was at school, I would conduct Bible studies with some of my classmates. In time, they joined me in serving Jehovah. When I think about being with them in the future paradise, it gives me deep joy.
And I'll also throw in some fun fan theories that I heard from other people. And if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness watching this, I want to hear your fan theories. Like, what were your little speculations on how paradise would work? I'll go first so you know what I'm talking about. Before I get too far into my headcanon, I want to talk about actual canon, things that witnesses say for sure are going to happen, because they do have some interesting little specifics that are going to inform my fantasy of what paradise is going to be like. Watchtower in recent years has been more specific about the fact that humans will actually have to rebuild the earth to its paradise state. So a lot of more recent pictures show people building, like actually constructing new buildings, Frank Lloyd Wright-esque finalized houses. A big question that comes up is about the resurrection. I can't believe I forgot to tell you about that. I'm so sorry. It's the best part of paradise. All the dead people come back to life. Not all the dead people. It's a little vague. But basically, Jehovah's Witnesses alone will survive Armageddon. But then there is going to be a resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. A huge thing that I'm not even going to get into, but it's important to know that this is a thing. This is just a thing happening in the background of every scenario we're talking about. Bible characters are going to be coming back from the dead. Like everybody in the Old Testament, that's before Jesus died, and so they don't get to go to heaven. It's a long story.
Oh, everybody born before Jesus is in hell.
Bible characters are going to come back from the dead. Your Moseses, your Aarons, your Noahs, Job. Oh my goodness, Job and all of his kids, the ones that died from old age and the ones from before.
Even though he had 10 more children later, we can be sure that Job was looking forward to seeing his other dead, lost children in the resurrection.
This is part of the mythology that we will learn even more accurate history of the Bible and therefore the world. So they're going to teach people about what happened in Bible times, but also, and this is not headcanon, this is actual Watchtower canon, everything I'm saying here. Watchtower teaches that like modern Jehovah's Witnesses, like the Jehovah's Witnesses who are alive now and survive Armageddon next month, when it inevitably happens, of course, they will have to teach resurrected people from Bible times about the history of Jehovah's people from the point they died onward. So Noah doesn't know anything about Hezekiah. Jehovah's Witnesses were going to have to like teach him all that stuff. And that's why it's not a waste of money that they are building a massive production facility to make movies that's not due to be completed for another year and a half. That's not a waste of time and money because it's going to survive Armageddon because safe zone over it, like the Orb in Phantom Menace around the Gungan troops, and who we respect and we thank them for their service.
The faithful slave now says many of the projects that are being worked on now, like Ramapo and the Good News, according to G's video series, may or perhaps will carry over into the new world to assist the great crowd with the work ahead and perhaps including resurrected ones. That's comforting. That's just, you have to let that sink in.
We're also going to have to make educational videos to teach the resurrected Noah and his family about the rest of what happened.
The massive education work that will be done in the new world. The glorified anointed ones will shine brightly as they work closely with Jesus to direct the education work.
And obviously, the most important thing they're going to really be wondering is, what were the last days like? What was the Great Tribulation like? And you, all of a sudden now, you, Mr. Jehovah's Witness, so-and-so, 25-year-old virgin who has no prospects and is very sad, you're kind of a Bible character now.
And think about this. Here we are 200 years from now. You're having a little barbecue in the backyard. You're enjoying yourself. You've got on the little wine and cheese. I thought of beer and a lobster roll when you're serving your friends. And, you have some older friends there, but then you have some new ones that have been resurrected recently. And, the fire's crisp. It's a cool evening. And you're discussing. And what do you think the ones that have been resurrected want to talk about? What happened?
What was it like in the time of the end? It was critical times, they're hard to deal with.
And you tell them.
Yeah, they were rotten. And they were bad things. But you know what? Because the good thing you remember is despite, against all odds, despite when the tough get going, when the going gets tough, the spiritually tough get going. I know I messed that one up.
You have lived during this legendary time in prophecy. You have seen great works and miracles of Jehovah. Now you are inspiring the very people who wrote the Bible that inspired you. It's nice, I'll say it's this nice Star Wars ring theory thing. So I'm not even getting into that. That was all preamble. Now that we've covered what Jehovah's Witnesses canonically believe about paradise, let's now get into the speculation that I had as a Jehovah's Witness, aka my headcanon or fanfiction. And to set up this first one, I need to pose a question. So there are pictures of where you see like a child, presumably a kid who died in our system of things, the world as we know it. The child died, the parent, a Jehovah's Witness, survives Armageddon. They are reunited with their now alive child, restored just how they were before they died. But of course, there are adults who die. This raises a question. See, the whole point in paradise is that you are going to be restored to a perfect state. So old people will become young again. Oh my God, I've awoken and you man. So that's the end goal of paradise, is everyone is young and hot and perfect and can live forever. But this raises a question. What is human perfection?
What did God intend to be the age at which people stop aging? Obviously, we're not all going to be little kids in paradise. We will grow up to a certain age, but elderly people who are resurrected will get younger to whatever this supposed peak is. And my question that I would constantly wrestle with as a witness is, what is the age at which we are all supposedly at our peak, both in terms of physical attractiveness, sexual whatevers?
That's obviously completely subjective, right? There are some people who probably peak early, like me in high school. That was it, It's been downhill from there ever since. There's some people like Padma Lakshmi who grow only more beautiful by the day. Who are we to say what her peak was? Tom Hardy. The man has always been a snack. Now he's a whole damn meal. What is he just going to get older and become a buffet? Who are we to say what the peak of Tom Hardy is? But George Clooney, I think it means we know that there is a peak at some point, but there's a question, like, is the peak of George Clooney Michael Clayton, or is it more Ocean's 11? Or is it ER? Did Jehovah not create men's hair to go gray? Because that's a thing that Jehovah's Witnesses talk about. They imply that the fact that our hair gets gray as we get older, that's imperfection. That's a result of the original sin in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve lost their perfection. They grew old. They were originally going to be young forever, but they get old. And their hair gets, gray and scary. But some men, I would argue many, look great with the silver fox look. They look great with gray hair. A lot of women look great with gray hair. I think there is beauty in gray-headedness, Maybe I do believe in something Jehovah's Witnesses believe after all. So what does Jehovah consider perfection? I think most people would say that George Clooney looks best, with his gray hair. Like that's kind of his iconic look. He went gray at a young age, but obviously there was a time when he was on like Roseanne and ER where he had brown hair. What does that mean? What did God envision George Clooney, like at what point should he have stopped? I think we all agree that he would have stopped by now. Like now he's an older man, still very handsome, of course. But Jehovah made us to procreate and fill the earth and become many. So he obviously wants us
to be sexy.
So we got to take that into consideration. I would spend hours thinking about things like this. And I guess I haven't even gotten into my headcanon yet. I'm talking about like the logic that you use to get to the headcanon. So I think my headcanon was that because beauty is subjective, it's not like everybody will look the exact same age, because some people are most beautiful when they're older. Even as I'm saying that, I'm realizing like that's a ridiculous statement. Beauty is not just physical. You can be beautiful in different ways. Like what the am I talking about? It doesn't make sense, right? It's a completely absurd scenario. But it was less absurd than thinking that the truth wasn't the truth. That was not allowed to be a thought in my brain. So I had to devise a scenario where all of these plot holes made sense. This is what I do with Star Wars. I have this like, how did Palpatine survive? Oh, well, I have headcanon for that. When he gets thrown down the shaft and you see that weird blue energy come up and it like hits Darth Vader's helmet, that was Palpatine's spirit. It hits his helmet. We know Kylo Ren has the helmet, and the spirit was inhabiting it. It all makes, it all makes sense. Now, is any of that said in the movies? No, but I got it all figured out up here. I'm not losing sleep over it. I have sorted out that plot hole because that is important to my brain, which may be undiagnosed with certain conditions, thinking of like, okay, well, maybe we won't all look like the exact same age. It'll just be like people peak at different times in their life. That was the parameters of my critical thinking, right? Like it is critical thinking of a sort, but in the way that we use it in like fictional universes. So that was one of my headcanons, that we would all be different ages. The other thing I thought, and now that I'm about to say this out loud, it's like, how did I ever think I had a shot at staying a witness? It was game over a long time ago. But I thought that eventually we would become all polyamorous. Like marriage would be done away with. There's this weird specific Watchtower question that comes up a lot about marriage in the new system. Will people who get resurrected be able to have a wedding ceremony and be legally wed as husband and wife? You might be thinking, that's a weird question. Why would you ask that, you strange weirdo? Which, first of all, it's a little judgmental. Basically, there's some Bible verse where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and whatever his response is makes it sound like those who are resurrected will not marry. Now, this isn't actually a question that most Christians worry about because they think that Jesus is talking about heaven and probably only heaven. But Jehovah's Witnesses have to incorporate paradise earth into the matter. They're marrying the Old Testament with the New Testament and being like, these are both true at the same time. Old canon and new canon are both true. Luke was married to Mara Jade and had children, but also, no, he wasn't. That's how you get the heaven and earth combo afterlife scenario.
So my headcanon was that because humans were going to live forever, we would naturally want to enjoy the boundless variety of creation, and that would mean that we would naturally want to enjoy the boundless variety of sexual partners, which meant that the marriage arrangement would fall away in the new system. And there would be some very spiritual and ethical way of engaging in polyamory throughout infinity.
When I thought this, I had never been married. I was a single guy in my 20s, resenting all of the lost time, the time that I was still a virgin. I was essentially an incel, and my copium for that would be that in the new system, it's like, well, I'll be able to have an infinity sexual partners in paradise. Meh. I think I also had a perception that like marriage was maybe a means to an end to like populate the earth, but that at a certain point, obviously we will have populated the entire earth. And we're going to have some logistical issues bringing back billions, if not a trillion dead people back to life, even if they are going to be killed in the second Armageddon that you didn't even know about. You didn't even know you had to worry about Armageddon round 2. So let's get into the next thing. So I guess one is like that there's going to be more of an age range, that like beauty is subjective and not everybody's going to be the same age. The second one is polyamory. I guess like the institution of marriage will evaporate. So the next one involves pain. Like everything else in my life. Am I right? We as humans were apparently not made to ever suffer or cry or experience pain. This is what the Bible says and what we sang as Jehovah's Witnesses every week.
Jehovah God didn't intend for humans to suffer. He gave the first human couple a wonderful start. But Satan, a rebel angel, called God a contrary.
And yet, we have pain receptors. Why would we have that? The result of imperfection, you say. I have an issue with your theology, sir or madam. Jehovah did not create anything past the last creative day. It's like 6 creative days, and then on the 7th day, he rests. So God did not make anything new after his last creative day. I mean, speaking of people who peak early, Jehovah peaked 7 days in his career, 6 arguably. So that means Jehovah did make us with pain receptors. It's not that we were never supposed to experience any pain at all. And the way my dad put it is like, well, you know, if you put your hand in fire, your body still needs to know that it's hot not to do that, or your skin will burn. And I would think, why though? Why in paradise would you not be able to do that? Like, why not? if we were designed to be immortal celestial automatons, none of that made any sense. If we're just always supposed to be like alive and healthy and perfect, to me, perfect implies indestructible, doesn't it? It's like, oh, we just finished this amazing thing, the Emperor. It's called the Death Star. It's perfect. Oh, it's perfect. It does have a huge hole. If you shoot it, it blows up everything, and like 1 million people on the Death Star die immediately. It's not really perfect if it has a weakness. And so I was very hung up on the idea of perfection, I guess is what I'm saying. So why would we not be able to just like, I don't know, jump off a cliff? Like jump off a cliff and fall flat on our face, like in a video game, in Spider-Man 2, or the original Spider-Man 2. I think in the new games they don't let you do that. They don't let you just splat in the Spidey PS4 game, and that's some garbage. Can I just say that? Insomniac's doing great work, obviously, but let me splat. Don't save me at the last second. If I jump off a building in a video game, that's between me and God. What would happen if you like jumped off a building in paradise? And the answer I found was that would kind of be our forbidden fruit. This is the thou shalt not pass. Like you can do everything except for eat of this one tree. So maybe in paradise, the thing is that the one thing you can't do is hurt yourself. You have to respect life within the confines that you're given. Some witnesses, I think this is also head-canon, but it might be in a publication somewhere. Jehovah has prevented human knowledge from progressing too far, because if we got too crazy, we could blow up the whole earth, which obviously we've had the ability to do that for a long time, but he would never let that happen. And also, for all we know, Oppenheimer BC would have happened. Caveman Oppenheimer, Onkenheimer, Bonkenheimer. Human knowledge could have progressed so much faster if only our brains weren't tainted by imperfection. So that was my other thing. I thought if we as humans want to fly, we have to invent the airplane. We don't get to fly like birds, but we can be inspired by creation. We can strive to mimic that in some way. That all sounds very nice in the hypothetical scenario where I am an immortal Jehovah's Witness who fucks whoever he wants and gets to build airplanes in his free time and ride a tiger, of course. And the last thing I thought was that we were definitely going to space. I was very annoyed with anyone who disagreed with me on this. We would get into fun fan theory discussions. I'm sure I'm going to get comments about my great and canonically correct Palpatine, how he survived there. Canonically correct? Yeah, because headcanon's the only canon that matters. So I definitely thought that we were going to be able to go to space. And I would get in arguments with people about this. First of all, it seemed obvious to me because we've been to space. Humans have done it in this imperfect system of things. And it seemed absurd to me that like we would be granted this ability to travel into the stars and then like Jehovah would rip it away. Like, no, that wasn't even supposed to happen. Forget about that. And I was just fascinated by the seemingly infinite expanse of the universe and the, different makeup of planets. I wanted Outer Wilds, the video game, to be true in real life, okay? As does everybody who plays that video game. I just wanted to fly around and see what kind of cool gravity shenanigans I could get up to on other planets. And I felt that God would grant me that ability because I would be alive forever. We're going to figure out everything on Earth after a few millennia. It didn't even take that many millennia for us to build rocket ships. So much shit is going to be destroyed in Armageddon. We might have to start from scratch on building rockets. Quick aside, quick bonus headcanon. I thought that we were going to kind of have to rebuild technology with clean energy. I thought that we were going to kind of have to learn from mankind's mistakes. So we would have to build clean energy. We would not be able to ruin the earth again, but we would have all of the knowledge of what came before so that our suffering was not one plot hole that I was not able to get over. And it was a reason that I left the organization, actually, was a very weird, specific, and egocentric plot hole that I found, which is, hey, what about me and the stuff I want to do? My dream was to be a writer, to be an artist, to have a successful YouTube channel. I wanted to entertain or perform or something. I wanted to do the stuff that I wasn't doing as a Jehovah's Witness. I wanted the chance to be able to do that in paradise. and like get better at the piano or whatever. So I wanted to write stories. I loved writing fiction. But the heart of a story is conflict, and there's not supposed to be any conflict in paradise. Is paradise a world without stories? Because if it's a world without stories, then it's not paradise. I guess it could be like a world of old stories. Like we just retell the same Bible stories over and over again. But that would be like, and I'm very sorry that this is what popped into my brain, but that movie, The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais. Very bizarre movie, but it's a world where it's kind of right there in the title, actually. Even fiction itself is seen as lying. So the main character works in a movie studio, but they just make documentaries because there aren't any new stories to tell.
Anthony, don't fire me.
Oh, Mark, the 1300s, they're so boring. And the last two scripts you turned in were depressing.
They were about the Black Plague. It's the 1300s. What am I meant to write about?
That kind of bummed me out. I was open to the creative challenge of writing fun stuff that never had any conflict in it. I like murder mysteries. I like psychological horror. I like stories where people go insane. I don't want to not have that in paradise. I want to still be able to enjoy experiencing those emotions. I don't like being terrified in real life, but processing that fear through a book can be really cathartic. And that's the same with basically every emotion. But it was hard to reconcile that with what I gathered paradise was supposed to be like. And Jehovah's Witnesses say, like, well, you're just going to be satisfied because Jehovah will satisfy every desire. You don't actually like murder mysteries that much. That's probably true. Like, hey, if it was up to me and I could destroy the genre of murder mysteries in order to make the world a paradise where we all live forever, I think I would do it. It seems a little bit like a Faustian bargain. I'm a little suspicious of the monkey's paw situation that's going to result. Anyway, so that always really bothered me. And little things like that actually contributed a lot to my waking up process because you're not allowed to think outside the box, but you can think inside the box. And this box is held together with tape. If you peel it back a little bit, you start to think like, hey, wait a minute, is there something outside of that box? Am I in a box actually? What am I doing how did I get in this box? Ooh, the last thing that I was very interested in was what's to prevent the whole cycle from happening over again. The sequence of events is like Armageddon happens. Jehovah's Witnesses survive. And then as we're rebuilding the earth, we are in the 1,000-year reign. So for 1,000 years, mankind will grow to perfection or work towards perfection. What does that mean? I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody could define it because it's not specific. You need head-canon to kind of sort that out in your own brain.
And that wonderful knowledge will enable faithful humans to grow to perfection and to sufficiently be equipped to face and pass the final test at the end of the 1,000 years.
At the end of the 1,000-year reign, there will be another day of judgment. Satan, he wasn't destroyed in Armageddon. He was just put in jail. He was chained in the abyss. And then God lets him out for one last party. They will ravage the earth of the people who have now, like, hey, you had 1,000 years to get your shit together. We brought you back from the dead and everything. You have no excuse to be gay.
There will be many others who will come back who will have to abandon their former way of life. I was thinking, as an example, a homosexual.
God's going to do a lot for you, but he's not going to cure you of the gays.
Now, this former homosexual comes back in the resurrection, and he really thought, and he was taught, and he came to believe that God accepted him with that lifestyle. But now he's going to learn about Jehovah's moral standards. And he's going to learn that Jehovah will not lower his standard to accommodate us. We have to come up to Jehovah's standard.
Will he change? Will he adjust? It'll be up to him. But you, brothers and sisters, will help such ones.
So Satan gets one more chance to kill even more gay people when he's let out the second time. But then, the 1,000 years, like then, okay, now we're really done. Now, no more Armageddons. Jehovah's Witnesses out there watching, don't forget, don't get too comfortable after this first Armageddon, because you got 1,000 years left to mess things up at the last second and die forever. So a plot hole that I noticed that required some head canonization was what's going to prevent yet another rebellion from happening post 1,000-year reign, when we're really, really perfect for real this time and double Armageddon is over and Satan's really dead. If we still have free will, then wouldn't people still have the free will to sin against God? And if we didn't have free will, then what would be the point? We would just be alive robots. So I had to headcanon that. And my thought, my fan fiction was, you can still sin. Like, you can still rebel against God, but you'll just be put to death. You'll just die. You're not going to be able to fuck things up for the entire human race. I'm just like, I'm saying this out loud, and I'm literally realizing that I didn't realize that meant that it wasn't paradise. Like, if you are, then and it's also not free will. Like, if you're walking around and you're an immortal, polyamorous, sex god with a fruit basket in paradise, but the only thing keeping you in line is the knowledge that you'll be instantly put to death if you ever question the king, that's not paradise. That did not cross my mind. My only fear, the thing that bothered me, was what if somebody else, like there's just another Adam and Eve, and they ruin everything for everyone again. Like, I was worried about somebody else messing up my paradise, or me messing up everyone else's. The plot hole I was trying to solve was like, what's preventing another Adam and Eve? I was fine with the idea that, like, oh, well, they'll just be put to death. But then if that's an option, why didn't God do that in the Garden of Eden to begin with? You know, why didn't he just kill Adam and Eve? That question is something that woke me up, because that was one of the public talks I gave. It was about original sin. And not till now, not till years later, did I also connect, hey, I could have applied that to the 1,000-year reign and saved myself some time, but okay. But yeah, that central question of, I think, considering his options, there's absolutely no rationalization for why the entire human race should be damned to suffer and die for thousands upon thousands of years. There's no amount of suffering that's worth it to prove whatever point. I just got scared. I thought someone was like coming through the window, and it was just Bo. The logic of why Jehovah's Witnesses allow suffering, I won't get into it because I've made entire videos about it. But yeah, so that was a fun bit of real-time introspection. Okay, so here's my favorite fan theory that I heard in a conversation I had with an elder. We were having a great old time having a conversation about stuff exactly like this. We were driving to Cedar Point, the amusement park. Cedar Point, Ohio. Very significant. It's where Jehovah's Witnesses got their name. And it's in Ohio, where I live. Is that going to be important in my upcoming book? I won't spoil anything. Cringe. Sorry. We're talking about all this stuff, and he is like, okay, I've got a big one. I got one I'm going to drop on you. I think the dinosaurs are coming back. And his wife was like, oh my God, he's going to talk about the dinosaur thing. He thought the dinosaurs were coming back. And this was an example of critical thinking on his part. Why the hell did God make the dinosaurs? Why did Jehovah make dinosaurs? Jehovah's Witnesses concede that the dinosaurs existed. Then at some point it was time to make way for man. They just are like, God decided, all right, it's time to do this for real now and get the thing I've really been planning all along, which is humans. That was never a very satisfying explanation to me. It clearly bothered my elder friends too, because this was on his mind. And he's like, what if them coming back, they're these massive creatures, they can help like clean the rubble of the earth. They're organic. They're not machines, but they could serve as like these bulldozers and cranes and forklifts. Forklifts? What's the best forklift dinosaur? I know it sounds silly, because of course it's silly, and we were laughing about it at the time. It's not like he was reading me his deepest, darkest secrets out of his diary. It was all in good fun. but it was an example of him trying to work through a doubt that he had. That doubt couldn't come to the conclusion that the organization was wrong about everything, but his critical thinking skills were there. He thought inside the box and found a way to make it make sense. Anyway, that's it. I've been thinking about paradise theories because I never want to portray Jehovah's Witnesses as a monolith. They're not robots. They are people. My family are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I love them and I miss them. And they are each unique and hilarious individuals. And they each had their own little fan theories about paradise. It kind of gives me hope that this is a way for Jehovah's Witnesses to kind of process their doubts. And that's kind of healthy. When, like, yes, they're contextualizing it in this one little area, but if they let themselves do that, it can grow into something bigger. I know it did for me. So anyway, I want to hear what your fan fiction was. Give me your headcanon for Paradise. How did stuff work? What kind of inventions were we going to have or not have? What were the new scrolls? Oh my God, we didn't even talk about the new scrolls. I'll save that for a future video because the normies, I would have to go into like a whole dissertation about what the new scrolls even are. But real ones know. So thank you for watching, and thank you to my patrons for supporting me in my dreams. Now that I have come to the unfortunate knowledge that I will not live forever, and I will not be an immortal polyamorous space communist who uses dinosaurs as forklifts.
Take one box, put it with another. Let's look for one that's long and wide.
People are everywhere. They're in the store, they're at the gas station, they're in the park, they're taxi, they're on the plane. You're having a little barbecue in the backyard. You're enjoying yourself. You've got on the little wine and cheese. When we see a little wine and cheese, we should think of a beer and a lobster roll. When we see a line now, we should think of a line. That phone that rings and it's unsolicited, we should think of a phone. Part B is really our goal, is those cards ready in our pocket. We've got that track ready to go. And other times, because of circumstances in the doctor's office, and a Bible study requires commitment every time you're in the doctor's office. It requires time every time you're in the doctor's office. If you're raising a family, you're burning a lot of your children. Yeah, they were rotten. But even though these things can sap us with our energy, but it's going to be a good time.